Good evening, everybody. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. It is 6:29. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for some more people to sign on tonight before we get started. And just as a reminder, I am broadcasting this live on Facebook. Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight to our first quarterly town hall of 2021. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight virtually. I hope you all are being safe and warm, and I hope you're not having too many issues with the weather tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started. As I stated earlier, I am broadcasting live on Facebook as well. So if you have any questions or comments that you would like to state, you can either put those in the chat here on Zoom, or you can put those on Facebook, and I will get to those and try and get to them at the end of this presentation. So with that, see if I can, here we go. All right, so just go ahead and begin by going over tonight's agenda. I want to recognize Ms. Faye DiMassimo, who is the Special Assistant for Transportation and Infrastructure for Mayor John Cooper and the Metro government. She is here tonight to kind of give us an overview of the recently passed transportation plan and how it will directly impact District 13. I'm also going to go over a few legislative updates of some bills and resolutions that I've sponsored and co-sponsored the last couple months since we met last time, and give you some updates on some upcoming events within the district that you might be interested in. And then we'll have a Q&A session. So just an update for this quarter, I have either sponsored or co-sponsored 28 bills and resolutions. Some of the more important ones, or some of the biggest ones I've worked on, is BL 2021-594, which was reducing the speed limits in the urban services district to 25 miles per hour in order to provide some extra safety and walkability for our neighborhoods. BL 2021-612, I signed on. This bill basically creates a commission to investigate and find out all that we can about the Christmas Day bombing and the after effects, and how we can make sure that such events don't happen again, and that we don't have such a drastic impact to our infrastructure and 911 capabilities. Resolutions I've sponsored recently, RS 2021-711, I co-sponsored with Councilmember Vercher. This was the blasting resolution that is asking our state legislatures to either give local governments more control and regulatory ability on blasting in our county, or at the very least, increase the penalties and increase some of the regulations behind it. Um, those who are in District 13 that are in the Woodland Point area are well aware of the effects of blasting. And that's part of the reason why I signed on to sponsor this, is to see if we can find some way to work with the state to lessen the impacts of blasting in our city. And then RS 2020-656 was an endorsement by the Metro Council for the Mayor's Transportation Plan, and part of the reason why we're here tonight with Ms. DiMassimo. There's 3 events I'd like for you to keep on your calendar. The first is starting tomorrow. I know I put the wrong date in there, but it is tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Myself and fellow Donaldson Hermitage Old Hickory council members are partnering with Metro trustee Erica Gilmore to do a tax relief workshop. So please join us for that if you think that you may qualify, or if you know someone who might qualify for tax relief. This Saturday is my monthly coffee with your councilman. I'm doing it again virtually. So if you'd like to set up a time between 8 and 11 a.m., just send me an email and let me know what time you'd like to set aside for conversations. And then lastly, Budget and Finance Chairperson Keontae Toombs and Vice Chair Delisha Porterfield have been doing a series of presentations called Metro Budget 101. There's 2 more of those sessions coming up on the 18th and the 25th. Those both start at 6 o'clock. And you can find more information about those at the Metro website under the council calendar. And now I will go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Faye DiMassimo. Again, she is the Senior Advisor for Transportation and Infrastructure. You are muted, Ms. DiMassimo.
Councilmember, can you hear me now? Very good. Well, it's a pleasure to be with Councilmember Bradford tonight and with you as his constituents, and to talk a little bit about the transportation plan. I know many of you likely participated in the community listening sessions or some of the stakeholder listening sessions that we held over the course of a year in developing the plan. So I won't go into a lot of detail on all of that background leading up to it, but I would like to talk a little bit about where we are now since the passage of the plan that Councilmember Bradford indicated again was something that he helped support, and we appreciate that. Where we're going from here and kind of how things are moving forward. We are, one of the things I want to emphasize is the transportation plan is definitely a living document. So I'm going to talk through some of the specific projects that are in Council District 13, but for example, on things like traffic calming and those kinds of things, if you don't hear a project that you are particularly interested in, that doesn't mean that it's not there, can't happen, or won't happen. It just means that we pulled from the list of things around traffic calming and sidewalks in particular that were already prioritized in the public works system. And we will be adding to those and reprioritizing those as we move forward over this year. So the transportation plan passed in December, and we immediately, even before it passed, had started getting to work on, you may recall that there's not a dedicated funding source for the transportation plan. We knew that this just was not the right time to pursue that, but we also knew we needed to make progress. And so we had identified a number of different funding sources that can help move the plan forward. And even within a month of the plan passing, one of those grant applications that we had prepared for one of the innovation corridors that's contained in the plan on MLK and Charlotte Avenue had in fact was one of 10 selected in the country for funding by the Federal Highway Administration. And we were very, very pleased about that. Since then, we've continued to look at projects all over Metro and figure out what are the right funding opportunities that are coming up. that are a good fit, and how can we advance projects. So in this council district, there's at least a dozen culvert projects. Those are very important in terms of improving storm drainage and controlling runoff and so forth in our community. So we had 12 of those in this council district. We had 10 current applications or prioritized applications for traffic calming, and the streets that were included in that were Fitzpatrick, Harborwood Circle, Harborwood Drive, and Kipling. And again, there could be more traffic calming projects that are being added to that, and there definitely will be as we move forward, but that was what was in the system at the snapshot in time that we added the list to the plan. This district is also particularly rich in investments in the better bus routes. So the Route 18 to the airport, Route 52, Nolensville Pike, Route 55, Murfreesboro Pike, and Route 77 are all projects to Thompson, are all projects that are going to get either expanded hours of service, better headways. Any of the better bus types of improvements, could be new shelters and so forth, that we've got 4 routes in this district that will see those improvements. There's 3 priority sidewalk network projects, East Thompson Lane, Murfreesboro Pike, and Vultee Boulevard. The East Thompson Lane project is about a half a mile long. Murfreesboro Pike's a mile and a half. And then the Vultee Boulevard is almost a mile as well. And then this district also is the home to I would say one of the 2, there's really 2 sort of truly major projects in the transportation plan. One, if you've looked at it and have seen this, is the Jefferson Street CAP, but the other is the Murfreesboro Pike Bus Rapid Transit project. And we are contemplating that to be what's called a gold standard BRT project, which means it would operate in a dedicated lane. The station locations associated with it would be, stations that would have development potential associated around them. They would be not a shelter, but an actual station. So we're excited about that. And both of those projects are the kind of projects that will be of real strong interest to the new administration in Washington. We are already seeing new funding opportunities. There was an announcement today on a major funding opportunity, and we know that there's others coming out in April. And then we also know that there's funding opportunities coming out from the state. Another project that will be particularly impactful in this district and in all metro districts is the modernization of our traffic management system. We know that both our signals themselves, but also our signal communication infrastructure, it really is in dramatic need of modernization. And one of the first pieces that we want to start with is building the traffic management center that becomes the nerve center for how we modernize and manage, improve safety, improve congestion, and increase the efficiency and effectiveness of our overall system. There is a funding opportunity that we anticipate in the spring that could fund that project at 100%. You may recall one of the goals that we had with this transportation plan, as a part of it being an opportunistic funding strategy, was to try to seek 60% of the funding from other sources, with 40% of it coming from the metro sources that are committed annually through the metro budget. And we've done well in how we are proceeding so far. Our next areas of focus also are the Vision Zero action plan development. You may recall that about a year ago, Metro announced that we would become a Vision Zero city. One of the first key activities there is to develop an action plan. We spent the last year scoping that project and engaging in the procurement process to hire the expertise to produce that plan. That plan is now underway. One of the things, we're not just waiting on the plan to come out. I'm sure that maybe perhaps a few weeks ago, you saw some of the press from Walk Bike Nashville around 7 corridors throughout Metro that are some of the real predominant areas for pedestrian fatalities. And some of those were, one of the identifiers was some association around poor lighting. So we've already got a project at 18 locations right now where we're working with NES, as well as TDOT, because those 7 corridors all happen to be state routes, to improve lighting in those areas where we've had those tragic accidents occur, while we're still developing, like I said, the Vision Zero action plan that will also suggest to us a range of projects that we will incorporate into the transportation plan in future updates and amendments. We are working on modernizing our parking infrastructure in the downtown in particular, but we also have plans, once we get that equipment, that on-street parking that's metered there, we get that modernized and we work on how we want to operate and manage that. We'll also be expanding and looking at how we manage curbside throughout Metro Nashville. That doesn't mean we're going to meter everything or anything like that, so I wouldn't want to concern you, but we do want to be able to look and say, how can we best make sure that we're managing our roadway infrastructure and our curbside so that it's safe and effective for you to travel in neighborhoods in particular. I think that that's all of the big things. We have one of the other initiatives in the transportation plan is a tool that we developed called Equity by Design. And it takes a different look at how we can better achieve equity in the implementation of infrastructure in our community. So in the past, lots of communities develop policy statements around equity, which is important to define your aspiration. And then, of course, there's federal regulations and environmental regulations and so forth that also especially when you've got federal funds on a project, the executive order on environmental justice and some of the regulations in the federal environmental regulations, you go about a certain process to assess those kinds of impacts. We wanted to think about it differently. We wanted to think about not how are we impacting and then sort of that avoid, minimize, mitigate sort of piece that is more traditional, but we wanted to say, how do we do better? How do we make sure that we're building infrastructure that better connects our entire community, that better connects all the users, all the residents in our community to all the things that they want to do? So we built a tool called Equity by Design, and it has 18 different factors that run everything from gentrification to some of the things you might more typically think of associated with equity considerations, to things just like access to schools and to employment centers and to healthcare. And what we're doing is we're going to be applying that tool to every single project and forcing a much more rigorous analysis at the project level of how that project can build and contribute to a more equitable community. And if each project is making those kinds of differences, then our whole system will be different. We're very excited about that, and we are applying for, there's something called the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge, and we are applying to seek some, they do a competition every year where they look for the best, most creative and innovative ideas around, the topics that many communities in the United States, but this particular year it's all around the world, are struggling with, that also have a COVID relationship. And of course, we know that the most vulnerable communities are the ones that have also been the hardest hit in many respects by COVID. It's just deepened those divisions. So we're going to put our Equity by Design tool in for that challenge grant to help provide us with some additional technical support and expertise to build that tool out even more strongly and more robustly than what we've done ourselves. So I think it's exciting times. It would be good if we could just have a little break. It seems like for a year Nashville has had more than I won't say more than its fair share, but it's certainly been quite an interesting journey over this last year. We've been impacted by so many things. I'm proud to be a part of this team and proud to be a part of the team with Metro Nashville that works with the council member and serves you. So glad to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. DiMassimo, I really appreciate you joining with us tonight and kind of giving us that overview of how District 13 will benefit from this transportation plan. I wrote down a couple of questions I think might be good for the community to know.
Okay.
You were talking about building those bus stations on the Murfreesboro Rapid Transit.
Yes.
Where do you envision those stations going? Do you see any of those being here in District 13, or are you looking at more in the Antioch area?
No, they would be all along that corridor, so that would not just be in one district or one area, but I can't tell you locations yet because we haven't designed the project. But they would be in the areas where there's ridership and where there's opportunity for it to become a part of a community asset, if you will, a part of the infrastructure that helps better serve the community. But we would certainly, again, an eye towards equity is how do we connect all the communities, so it wouldn't just be in one particular area.
Okay. Do you have a time frame for when that project will start and estimated completion, anything like that?
You know, if you had asked me that 6 months ago, I would have just told you I really just don't know. But the new administration has really gotten behind, and we'll see what Congress does with it. If a very robust infrastructure bill becomes a reality, then I think that projects like that one, because they're exciting, game changer, big investment kind of projects, are going to be the kind of projects that can compete well in federal opportunities. And so a project like that typically, though, takes from start to finish, from the time you start designing it, go all the way through the environmental process and so forth. You're looking at usually about 7 years. But if we can get started soon, then we can be, well along the way over the next several years. We can really start to make some real progress. But typically those kind of major projects like that take around 7 years.
Okay. And the last one I jotted down, you were talking about increasing the street lighting and visibility. Are you going to focus more on the main thoroughfares, or will there be some focus on expanding the lighting deeper into the neighborhoods, especially where there's sidewalks?
What we started off with, council member, what I was referring specifically to is the 7 major state route corridors where we've had high incidents of pedestrian fatalities or pedestrian crashes, and where there was an identification that lighting could have been a contributing factor to those crashes and those fatalities. And so those are the areas where we're focusing right now with NES and TDOT to make those kinds of changes to improve the safety. But I do understand that there's a desire for lighting more broadly and into the neighborhoods. And I think that those are the kinds of things we need to consider as we move forward with, thinking about what all the plan over its development and over time needs to be able to focus on.
All right, I appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or put it in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, put it in the comments section. This is your time.
All right, everyone's gonna probably think I'm crazy, but around Stewart's Ferry Pike and Lebanon Road, they have the little stoplights, bird chirpers, all that stuff. But I would like to see that come into our district. How can we go about getting that in?
And it was at Stewart's Ferry Pike and where again?
Stewart's Ferry Pike and Lebanon Road by the School for the Blind.
And what is there again?
It's like the little bird chirping sound.
Oh, it's the ones that make sure that if you have any sort of impairment, that it alerts you and it alerts others to activity.
Yes, I would love to see that around here, mostly around Thompson Lane and Murfreesboro Road.
Okay.
I mean, if there's anything I can do to help with the process, count me in.
Okay. I'm making a note. I got it. That's called an audible alert. I can't hear you, council member. There you go.
Yep. Okay, everybody, don't be shy. And I know y'all have questions. All right, here we go. We got two that popped up.
I'm trying to read this. Let's see.
Several friends are concerned about the Community Oversight Board and its lack of balanced representation of all citizens of Davidson County. Okay, this is not so much a question for Mr. DiMassimo, so I'll hold on this one and I'll cover it during our Q&A at the end of the meeting.
There is a question over here that says, as you continue to build out infrastructure on Murfreesboro Road, how are you going to ensure safety as a priority? And this is a part of what the Vision Zero Action Plan is intended to do, is to make sure that, and the equity by design. Both of those tools are intended to make sure that as we are building infrastructure, improving existing infrastructure, building new infrastructure, that those kinds of considerations are built into the design of the project. So I don't want to tell you that, sort of, it sounds like I'm telling you to take my word for it. And I don't want to, I want you to know that we actually have processes built into how we are going to go about doing our business, in terms of designing projects, building projects, and so forth. And both of those tools will ensure that safety is maintained as a priority. The other thing that I think is going to be helpful is one of the recommendations that came with the plan was a recommendation that we also form a Department of Transportation. Consideration of that will be coming before council. A recommendation that was made to the mayor will be coming before council. And I think that how we will have an organization that focuses on transportation infrastructure, and also how we staff that in terms of the, ensuring safety is a priority as a part of how we organize the staffing of it and the performance. One of the things that we wanted to do was to have an organizational structure that is driven by performance metrics. And so safety as a performance metric also makes sure that the organization is responsive to that as well. And we are doing that.
Kind of a question on that real quick. Are you anticipating a Department of Transportation to be adapting some of what Public Works already does? Or are you anticipating it being completely new line item department? So if it takes from Public Works, what other departments are going to be potentially affected by it?
No, there are several departments. So there are some transportation planning activities that are currently housed in the Department of Planning. There actually is a very minimal right-of-way function that occurs over in finance, but it hasn't, right now we just aren't staffed up on the right-of-way functions that we need. So it really wouldn't be taking away from that. There are, I was trying to think, besides Public Works and Planning, there are a couple of other departments with some incidental pieces, but this would not be it's largely taking the transportation function of Public Works and reorganizing it into a more performance driven, accountability, efficiency, effective, refresh the focus of what is there. So it will not be a new department, a new line item. It will be, though, a reorganization of various activities that are occurring in different parts of Metro Nashville's overall organization structure into a focused unit of government that will be driven by performance, efficiency, and effectiveness. And so hang on a minute, I've got several questions in here. Plans to invest in the railroad routes. Typically, we wouldn't be investing in the railroad routes. What we are doing is looking at things like at-grade crossings and how we can improve safety at grade crossings. So to that extent, but the railroad routes themselves are typically invested in at the corporate, private level, CSX and so forth, but also, in funding that comes through the Federal Railroad Administration to the state. Is there a time frame to start on the traffic signal modernization? I'm sorry. The question popped, jumped down. Yes. Our hope is that we apply for the grant that we're planning to apply for in April to build out the traffic management center, that we would be able to get started on that this year. And the kinds of upgrades that would be done would be things like smart signals that can be that can operate in a more efficient way, because they can actually communicate with each other. They can recognize they have detection, so they understand what's happening with the traffic under, on the ground, so to speak. So if there's a big slowdown on traffic, rather than the signals just running through a signal timing plan, a standard signal timing plan, it would actually adjust in real time to what's happening with the traffic, so things could move more safely and more efficiently. So those are the kinds of upgrades. So modern signals, modern detection, modern equipment, connectivity. That's typically, so what impact will it have? It'll be safer, and it'll move more efficiently and more effectively. Of the 7, the traffic signal improvements are planned to be throughout Metro Nashville, and we're also working with TDOT as well. So yes, there will certainly be improvements in District 13. I can't call out what all the locations would be right at this moment, but yes, there absolutely will be. And public railways for travel. There's a conversation, and I'm sure some of you may have heard this. Amtrak is having a conversation at the federal level, at the national level, around reestablishing commuter rail service in different parts of the country. One of the places that's of interest to them is in connecting us down to Atlanta. And so we stay in communication with them to understand what the current conversations are and what they're thinking. And so we're still a corridor of interest for them. So there's, that potential for public railways for travel. And let's see, Elm Hill and Murfreesboro Road. Not aware of any work that was done there. Done on Bell Road. I will have to check on Bell Road for you. But I will check on Bell Road, and I will get that. That was from B.L. Dooley. I will check on that, and I will get that answer back to the council member to get it back to you, Mr. Dooley.
We did have one question on Facebook. Jennifer Brannon states, you mentioned something about sidewalks on Thompson Lane.
Mm-hmm.
What does that entail, and what part of Thompson Lane?
I'll have to get, it's East Thompson Lane, but I will have to get the exact limits of that project. I don't have it here with me right now, but I can get that for you. Who asked that question again?
Jennifer Brannon. Okay. And with all with any outstanding answers, like Ms. DiMassimo said, she'll get those to me, and then I can put those in the chat, the comments on the main page for tonight's event, and also can include it in my next newsletter as a follow-up for tonight.
Perfect.
Now, do we have any more questions for Ms. DiMassimo?
Well, guys, thank you so much for having me tonight. Council member, thank you. It was an honor to be with you all tonight, and I appreciate all of your good questions. And stay tuned, because we've got a lot of progress to make, and we're going to get it done. So thank you.
You're welcome. We thank you so much for giving a little bit of your time to us tonight to go over this very complex topic that is transportation and transit in Music City. So thank you again.
I'm actually headed to a workshop with the Bloomberg folks on that grant that I told you about earlier. So we've got a workshop tonight. So that's where I'm headed next. So.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you later. Y'all be safe, and thank you.
All right. And with that, we'll move on to the questions for me. So there was a question earlier about the diversity on our boards and commissions here in Metro. So anyone who watched last night's meeting saw that we spent a great deal of time on just this topic. Right now, the biggest issue is people want more diversity, not just on all of our boards, but specifically the fair board because of its location. So we did have a good in-depth conversation, and I hope that our conversation from last night builds and we actually see some changes. The easiest way for the citizens to make sure that our boards and commissions have increased diversity is by emailing the mayor and the vice mayor and giving them nominations of people who you think would best serve on different boards. There should be information about the different boards and commissions on the Metro website, but I'll be happy to do some research on my end and put that information out there for you as well. So if you know somebody who might be a good fit for the fair board or for any other board that we have, you can send those to me, I can forward them, or you can send them directly to the mayor or vice mayor. They are typically the ones who make the appointments, and then the council votes on it. So I appreciate everyone who has emailed about this topic and has shown an interest in wanting to make sure that our boards and commissions are as diverse as our city. And I'm trying to pull the chat up here so I can get the rest of your questions. Okay, the sinkhole you're mentioning on Vultee, I believe I know the one you're talking about. I noticed that several months ago when I was out in the community, and I sent that information over because that area, if it's the one that's actually on Murfreesboro Road, that's a state route, and so the situation was turned over to the TDOT, and so I can follow up with them and see what we can get done with that. And if anybody else has any questions for me, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. All right, well, I really appreciate everybody for coming out tonight and joining us for our first quarterly town hall of 2021. So stay tuned for more updates and more information. Our next town hall will be in sometime this spring. Hopefully we won't have any snow by then. So again, thank you everybody and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Councilman, hold on. We've got
Yes,
a
Andy.
question.
Yeah.
There was a question in chat. In fact, there's 3 questions.
Let's see, are there any plans for any work on Bell Road? It has been added to the capital improvements budget over the last several years. So there has been some requests for work. I have not heard of any plans coming up for that. And I can send that question also to Ms. DiMassimo so she can be in the loop on that as well.
What about the subdivision or the apartment complex that was going to be across from, that is not coming up anymore? Are they going to do something else with that property?
So the development you're talking about is the one we had a meeting on a couple weeks ago. The apartment complex, yes, it is pretty much kind of dead right now. I did tell the developer the feedback that I received from the community was they did not want massive apartment complexes on that street because of the traffic and the blasting that it would entail. The developer's representative did follow back up with me and state that there is a possibility they could do something different, do something more of what they call a vertical, or excuse me, horizontal complex, which is basically, it'd be 2 single family unit style buildings that would share a single back wall. So basically a duplex type development. They would need a little bit more land since they'd be spreading out. They sent me some examples of communities they've already done. So I will have another community meeting just so that they can present that to the community and see if if they can get some consensus or some compromise there. But again, anytime I have these meetings and present this information to the community, this is not me saying this is what I want to do. This is just me being fair to the developers and to the community by letting you know what they're wanting to do and let the community have a chance to have their feedback. So by all means, this does not mean that I'm pushing for an apartment or a duplex complex. I'm just being fair to all parties and letting them be able to present what they would like to do and have the community have their opportunity to have their feedback. As far as the development Elm Hill Road, that's now called Elm Hill Place, is the name of that development. You'll be seeing some notices and some signs coming up in the next couple of days. That will be going to the Planning Commission on March 11th, I believe is the correct date. The notices will say that it's for multifamily. Don't get worried. That's just what the planning department puts when you're dealing in development that includes more than one house. So it's not apartments, it's going to be single family homes, but the notices will refer to it as multifamily. So I'll post more information as we get closer to the public hearing on that. So anyone who has concerns or wants to make comment can do so with the planning commission. And then and Andy, I do appreciate you bringing up this question because there is one more development that I was going to update everyone on. I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago that there's a 17 home development going on Bell Road south of Harborwood or the Harborview community. It was supposed to be on the planning commission last week, but it's been deferred another month. So it will probably be on the same night as Elm Hill Place. This development is called Carlton Estates. It does not require council approval because they're not seeking a rezone. They're just seeking permission basically to do a small subdivision there of 7 homes. So if anyone has any concerns or wants to make any comment on that, they are more than welcome to at the planning department, planning commission meeting, but that development will not come before council. So there's nothing I can do on that one. I'm just making sure everybody knows what's coming down the pike. Another comment from an individual thanking me and asking that we not do any more development on Bell Road until something's done about the traffic flow. I agree we need to do more about Bell Road. And like I said, it's on the radar. We just haven't got anything approved budget-wise to get it done. And we will hopefully, when we get more money from the federal government and from the state, we can do something to get that ball rolling. Well, anybody else have anything they want to ask? All right, everybody. Stay safe, stay warm, stay 6 feet apart, and have a good night, everybody.